Alright, first off, I want to give all praises and glory unto Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Shalom to the brothers in highways and byways pushing this word now in sincerity and truth. The sisters, the believers, the helps, the hopeful elect. Shalom. This is the brother Arwam from a James Jamaica camp coming to another quick lesson. And this lesson is going to be a quick exhortation, you know, to brothers who at times, get overwhelmed, you know, and to the point where it may feel like quote unquote depression. There are times when things get heavy within the spirit, but at the same time, we have to understand that we have to maintain faith in Yahweh Shem Yahushua. We can't make because of, the struggles that we go through, that we take our heart from the plow. And one of the things, in recent times, the Ariella did a video on it, the Ariella from the Dallas camp about, a guy that left, I think it was the Indianapolis camp, saying that he needed to step away because of, various things that he was going through. Based on, what I got from the video, it was mainly financial was the main part of it. He was he's saying he's a single father, and mentioned a few things, but from what I was getting, it was mainly financial. And being in this world, especially as a man, one of the things is that you want to be able to provide for yourself, but also we have to remember that we are being tried, and various temptations, sometimes it comes in the form of finances, and sometimes it can last for a hell of a long time, and I can speak from personal experience, where that is concerned. Even the brother Ariella, he did a couple of videos, or he did another video, about maintaining while we're here, not just being bums because we are hoping that this thing crashes. It's about maintaining, taking care of our affairs, while we're here. But the long and short of it is, these things can happen, and it mainly happens from a financial standpoint, and it can really, especially when it's for a prolonged time, it can really get to you, and even get to the point where you're either unproductive within the ministry, or you're you just step away, like that brother that was in the whether, I don't know if he was in the camp or it was around the camp, but that brother that Ariella did the video concerning. All right, and this precept that I'm about to read is what really led me, to really, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, of course, to do this lesson. This is the book of Sirach, also known as the book of Ecclesiasticus 26 verse 4. It says, whether a man be rich or poor, if he have a good heart towards Yahweh, he shall at all times rejoice with a cheerful countenance. And what it goes into, the fact that that's us. Once we have the mindset of casting our cares upon Yahweh Shem Yahushai, regardless if the situation is good or bad, regardless if we're in a financial bind for a long ass time, and trying to you work it out, but everything that you try fails, or maybe a case where the moment it seems like things are about to look up, it goes bad again. And part of it is the Lord showing us that we're putting our trust in riches and not necessarily in him, because the scripture also tells us that the Lord in an instant can make a rich man poor and a poor man rich, in the same book here, in the book of Sirach. So it's to maintain our integrity, and think about our forefathers, like even Joseph. Imagine being sold by your brothers, being carried off to Egypt. That must have been overwhelming. That I can imagine that pushing any man to a certain point. But not only that, let's say that you make the best of your situation. He becomes second in the house of Potiphar, right? The wife accuses him of trying to lay with her. He's thrown in prison, because he did the right thing. That's also something that can be, overwhelming, and can, push you to the brink. And then, having the dreams, telling the both prisoners to telling the I think it was either the baker, no, not the baker, the cupbearer, the wine bearer, to remember him. And it was years after, when Pharaoh was having the dream, he got remembered. But through it all, he always, you know cleaved onto Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And then in the end, even his brothers were saying, we need to leave, because after he gets them the food and everything, and they find out who he is, and he's saying, we need to leave, because after their father died, they're saying that he's going to take revenge. And he was like, no, the Lord did all of this, so that the nation could be saved. So despite how overwhelming, and how pressing, and how trying that must have been, he still held firm to Yahweh Shem Yahushai. you know so he was joyful. And not to say that things won't happen where you don't feel pressed in the spirit, or overwhelmed, or sometimes it does get heavy. you know uh, there are times when even you may even shed a tear or two. Who's to tell? But guess what? At the end of the day, you know, we have to stay close to Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. For the most part, that confidence that we should have in Yahweh Hashem Yahushai should keep us going. And that's what it's saying here, right? It says, whether a man be rich or poor, if he have a good heart towards Yahweh, he shall at all times rejoice with a cheerful countenance. So, you won't be going around with that woe is me spirit. You know, you won't be going around with a woe is me spirit. All right. So let me get my next precept. So like if it sounds like I'm rambling a bit, I just that I wanna, I'm hoping that I'm making sense. All right. So this is Sirach chapter 30, and I'll start at verse 21. Right. It says, "Give not thy mind over to heaviness, and afflict not thyself in thine own counsel." And that's, the same example of, the brother that stepped away from the camp. Uh, he wasn't Ariel going into it. He didn't see counsel, because if he had seen counsel, then maybe there were different ways in which the situation could have been possibly handled. You know, at one point in the video, he said that after one of the incidents, he knew he had to step away. And that's showing a lack of faith. And at times, you have those spirits, or those demons. You have thoughts come to your mind telling you, oh, this, you have to do this, or you have to do that, or you see, you're not a man of the Lord because of this, or you're gonna fall out, or those thoughts come. But you have to rebuke them, and always seek counsel, because within, I said I've been in this situation, financial situations, not necessarily a single father situation, but in heavy financial situations. And it's through counsel with the men in my camp. Well, select few, of course, but through counsel, I I've been able to make it through Yahweh Shem Yahushai giving me those brothers to help guide me. And the thing about it is, some of the times, the things that I was thinking, and when I ask counsel about, they're like, why are you thinking about that, or why are you suggesting that, or that's not the way to think about it. You're overthinking, or you're looking at it from a wrong perspective. But all of those, part of me combating those thoughts was through seeking counsel, and through getting that guidance, and being strengthened. you know I was able to navigate better, right? And it wasn't, even though it was still heavy, but it wasn't as heavy, right? Verse 22 says, the gladness of the heart is the life of man, and the joyfulness of a man prolongeth his days. And that's the thing, it can really get to the point where it even affects, your physical appearance, because it can really, like, your spirit being feel like your spirit is being weighed down. In the book of Proverbs, it says that hope that is deferred um break it the heart, or something along those lines. I'm going to look for it shortly. Let me just finish this. um the gladness of the heart is the life of man, and the joyfulness of a man prolongeth his days. So yeah, overthinking and chastising yourself within your mind, afflicting yourself in your own mind and in your own counsel, it doesn't really work. And being in that overwhelmed and depressed, that sunken place, and staying in that woe is me spirit, it's really not good, you know. And as I said, I've been through it. I've been on that side of it, and I've also been on the side of, being comforted. I've been on the side of, being built up. I've been on the side of praying, and through my experience with it, the Lord has taught me a lot, where these scriptures pretty much definitely resonate, with me, and I'm able to really understand what this is saying, based on those experiences. All right, verse 23 says, love thine own soul, comfort thy heart, remove sorrow far from thee, for sorrow had killed many, and there is no profit therein. And even in this world, this is one of the reasons why a lot of people even, off themselves, is because they afflict themselves in their own mind, and they don't try to put away the sorrow and those negative thoughts and those negative feelings. They pretty much dwell in them, and let it overtake them, you know and even from a mental standpoint, it I think there's a study that says that stress brings up cortisol, and also helps with heart attack. It sometimes stress can age you, like have you looking well aged. There are also physical signs of stress. you know Not, your sleeping pattern is all messed up. You can't eat properly. Eating pattern messed up. Loss of appetite, and you just, it's almost like you're just withering away. you know so for brothers who are going through it, and I know we're all going through something. We're all going through our own personal fight. But we have to be careful, when it comes on to be you know being overcome, and being overwhelmed with these spirits. Seek counsel, speak to brothers, pray, fast, read the scriptures, draw closer to Yahweh Shem Shai, and just keep pushing through, studying, and doing the work, right? It says, for sorrow had killed many, and there is no profit therein. It says, envy and wrath shorten the life, and carefulness bring it age before time. And when the word carefulness, as we're going to get it in the New Testament, the definition, it usually leads back to being anxious, anxiety, that overwhelming feeling, of just being anxious, and wanting to get out of the situation, and just keep getting anxious all the time. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? How am I going to get out of this situation? I'm trying this, it's not working. I'm trying that, it's not working. And it's to the point where it's almost as if it's driving you crazy. And sometimes it hits hard as hell. I can, as I said, I can relate. But through the grace of Yahweh Shem Shai, you know, I've been able to fight. You know, it says, a cheerful and good heart will have care of his meats and diets. That's also another thing. In that state, we have to ensure that we're eating. We have to ensure that we're eating properly. We have to, in order to be built up. The body is what hosts the spirit. So if your body is all messed up, your mind, and it's the mental, you know, it's going to be messed up as well, so when you're in those times, sometimes it will make you even feel like you want to, neglect, yourself, even if you research depression, some of the things goes into not eating well, not sleeping well. Some people don't like to, don't want to take a shower. Some people, don't clean up their surroundings. It gets, it can be bad, you know. Now, going to chapter 31, it says, watching for riches consumeth the flesh, and the care thereof driveth away sleep. Watching, caring will not let a man slumber, as a sore disease breaketh sleep. All right, and that's true. It consumes the flesh. As I said, sometimes you don't eat well, you don't sleep well. It can have you all messed up, especially when it comes down to, trying to get that money, trying to balance things out. But the key is to endure and continue praying unto Yahweh Shem Shai, and knowing that, He'll make a way through. All right. So let me go to the um well, let me check for Proverbs first. The fur. Slovakia. Hope deferred. Right, this is Proverbs 13, verse 12. It says, hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life. So yeah, speaking from my experience, there are times when I was like, yeah, this is about to be handled. This is the Lord is about to, you know, fix this. And then, in the midst of it, last minute, everything just falls apart, and you're like, shit, I'm back at square one, you know. But at the same time, we still have to hold on. We still have to continue, you know, holding on to Yahweh Shem Shai. All right. So let me get the next precept, which is First John chapter 2, verse 15. It says, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And while I understand that, being in certain, trials and tribulation, it's not so much of, you know, wanting to be rich. It's just you are in a financial bind that you want to be fixed. And it's like, there's a feeling like there's no way out. But trust me, focusing on Yahweh Hashem Shai, focusing on the kingdom, and as even the tips that the brother Ariala gave, about taking our time and building ourselves up, and well, not building yourself up, but handling our business, clearing up debts, fixing our spending habits, budgeting, things of that nature, and getting our shit together, so to speak, bit by bit, it works. But it's the key is to keep the main thing the main thing. All right. It says, for all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of this world. And the thing about it is, being in that situation, sometimes you may see people around you that seem to, have their shit together, and it can be embarrassing, always asking for help, in the terms of asking for money, and things of that nature. It's not a good feeling. It can be very embarrassing, having to explain your situation and not feeling too good about it. But guess what, pride has to go aside, because in some aspects of it, it's also the Lord humbling us, and we have to exercise humility, you know because at the end of the day, without humility, then it makes no sense. And if it's a case that you don't want to do, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to do this by myself, and I'm going to find a way out. That would be us trusting in ourselves. So the focus has to always be upon Yahweh Shem Shai, and leaving things in his hand and having faith, because that's one of the things that even coming out of the wilderness, the children of Israel lacked. You know, the faith of knowing that Yahweh Shem Shai will deliver out of any situation once you have faith. You know, despite them seeing all the signs from Egypt up to the point in the wilderness, you know, they were lacking that faith that the Lord can definitely deliver, but we have to have patience. You know, verse 17 it says, "And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of the Most High abideth forever." And peep that last line. But he that doeth the will of the Most High abideth forever. And that is key. Is to always have Yahweh Shem Shai at the forefront of our minds. All right. Getting the next precept, which is Philippians chapter 4, verse 6. It says, "Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, that your requests be known unto the Most High. And the peace of the Most High shall pass, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Yahweh Shai the Messiah." All right, so let's look on this word careful. All right, there's the Greek. It says to be anxious, to be troubled with cares, to seek to promote one interests. Right? It says as you feel like things aren't working out the way or you want it to work, and you start to get antsy and feeling overwhelmed. As I said, I can speak from personal experience. Let me see if there's nothing here. Right. As it says here, it says be anxious. No. It says with the dative of the thing for the interest of which one is solicitous. Right. It says about sustaining life. And it references Matthew chapter 6, which we're gonna actually get that shortly. So I'm gonna leave that for now. Right, it says, "What be careful for nothing, in everything, in prayer and something." Right. But in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known unto the Most High. It says, "And the peace of God," and let's look on this word peace. Right. I'm gonna get to the fifth definition. It says, "Of Christianity, the tranquil state of a soul assured in its salvation through the Messiah, and so fearing nothing from God, and content with its earthly lot of whatsoever sort that is." And that is the key part right there. Right? Regardless of I'll read it again. It says, "Of Christianity," no, it's referring to the church back then, right? "The tranquil state of a soul assured of its salvation through the Messiah, and so fear nothing from God, and content with its earthly lot of whatsoever sort that is." All right. So regardless of the situation, once we are careful for nothing, we'll have peace, in Yahweh through Yahweh Shai, regardless of whatever state that we're in. Right? And it says what? And it says, "Shall keep your hearts," right? To guard, to protect by military guard, either to prevent hostile invasion, right? Metaphorically, it says by watching and guarding to preserve one for the attainment of something. And guess what? We are being preserved. We have the hopeful elect. We have the faith that we're being preserved for salvation. All right. So Going back, by reading that line again, verse 7 says, "And the peace of God which passeth all understanding shall keep your hearts and mind through Yahushua the Messiah." So it's regardless of the situation, regardless of the circumstance, is to be cleaving unto Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Alright? Um going for the next precept. Okay. Right. Luke, this is Luke chapter 8, verse 14, and it's breaking down the parable of the sower, and it's breaking down the seed that fell among the thorns, right? It says Luke 8 verse 14, it says, "And that which fell among the thorns are they which have heard, go forth, and are choked with the cares and riches and pleasures of this life, and bring no fruit to perfection." As I say, being in that overwhelming state, especially when it comes down to finances, and trying to get that money and everything, you know can definitely choke the word out of you, you know and it can cause you to be unprofitable within the ministry. Let me see if it's the same word. Right, cares. So it goes back to care, anxiety, right, through the idea of distractions, right? So the anxiety that comes with not being able to um, you know not having, or not secured financially, but one thing we're secured within the ministry. The ultimate thing is that we have this truth. The ultimate thing is that we have Yahweh Shem Shai, right? So this is Matthew chapter 6 and verse 25. It says, "Therefore I say unto you, Yahweh Shai speaking, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature?" And even when I was going through my situation, there are many ideas that I came up with, and many so-called solutions, and I tried a lot of things, and that says a lot of them didn't, a lot of them failed. Some of them seem as if they were going to come to fruition, and at the last minute it just broke apart, and some things just didn't work at all. Well, guess what? At the end of the day, the Lord gave me the spirit to say, you know what, regardless, I still have this truth. I have Yahweh Shem Shai. And once I don't lose this ministry, once I don't fall out of this truth because of these things, and I pray I don't fall out overall, once I have the Lord, I'll be straight, you know. And brothers, who know, it's my situation was for a long time, you know. But that's the thought that the Lord gave me, that helped to keep me to regardless of how bad it gets, is to not take His spirit from me, is to ensure that I cleave onto the ministry, and that's the spirit that I had. I just always just held on straight to say, look, regardless what happened, at least I have Yahweh Shem Shai, right? Verse 28, it says, "And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, they toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast in the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith?" And that is it. The faith, you know, we need to have big faith, and we have to exercise that big faith from now, regardless of the situation and how long the Lord takes to deliver us from it, you know. the patience and the endurance has to be there. Is to know that regardless of how long it takes, or regardless of how bad it seems, the Lord, got us. Verse 31, it says, take therefore no thought, saying, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, or wherewithal we shall be clothed. For all these things do the Gentiles seek, for your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things. Yeah, Yahweh Shemashai knows the things that we need. It says, but what? But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. And going through my situation, each day I was like, look, you know, how about Shemel shall bring me through today? You know, today wasn't as what I would work out how I hoped, or this situation didn't work out how I hoped. You know, the Lord's got me, come up with a game plan, try again, try find a solution, go through with faith. If it doesn't work out, the Lord doesn't want it to work out. But just keep pushing, because at the end of the day, at least you have Yahweh Shemi Shai. Right? Next precept is Romans chapter 8. And I'll start at verse 28. It says, and we know that all things work for the good of them that love Yahweh Shemi Shai, and to them who are called according to his purpose. So all things work to the good, for the good, So regardless of the situation, it's all good. Our camp head, likes to say, even when it's bad, it's good. It's always good. Even when it's bad, it's good. He says that a lot, and I know we laugh a lot, but we laugh about it, but we understand what he means. Once we have faith in Yahweh Shem Shai, would be good. All right, so I'm going to get one more precept, then I'm going to close out. Skip. All right, this is First Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. It says, there had no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able. And that's one of the things that I'll bear in mind as well. The fact that, even though it feels heavy, and I feel like I'm going through it, I like, look, the Lord, you're going through this because the Lord know that you can bear it. And even the camp at one point, he told me, he said, look, you're going through this so that, that there's going to come a time when you're going to use this experience to build other men's faith, and to help other brothers who may be in a similar situation, so you just have to bear it. But in time, the Lord is gonna, work it out. Just have faith and keep on fighting. It says, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. And even though, it didn't work out, or got fixed right away, even in the times where it was like horrible, there are also ups in the midst of it, because it was never to a point where, it was always where, when I really needed something, it would come. It would just always be like, to be sorted out, but nothing to really get me out of the situation per se. But overall, but it was bit by bit, day by day, and I was just learning that, look, it's just your daily bread. It's just your daily bread. Just keep on going, at least, because guess what? If the Lord, even though it's down, there's an upside to it, ups and down, until the overall situation, got fixed. So even within that, the Lord showed me that, and that also always boosted my faith as well, because I'm like, look, the Lord is showing me that despite as bad as I think it might be, or as bad as I think it will get, I'm still here. I'm not forsaken. All right. So hopefully this was edifying. Once more, I want to give all praises and honor and glory unto Yahweh Hashem Shai Bashem Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Shalom to the brothers in the highways and byways pushing this word in all sincerity and truth. The sisters, the believers, the helps, the hopeful elect. Shalom.